First contact with the swarm. Admiral Lyra Voss watched the holographic display as another Cathari defense platform dissolved under the relentless assault of the Nexite swarm. The crystalline beings had been pushing deeper into Alliance space for the past 3 cycles, and nothing in their vast arsenal had proven effective against the hive mind's adaptive capabilities. 6th Fleet reports complete loss of the Gamma Sector defensive line, announced her second-in-command, Commander Zhen. His iridescent scales had dulled to a matte gray, a sign of deep distress among his species. The Nexites have already begun converting the wreckage into new combat units. Lyra's 4-fingered hand clenched around the command rail. The Cathari Alliance had stood for 10,000 years, unifying dozens of species across 3 spiral arms. They had weathered the Great Collapse, survived the Quantum Plague, and even managed to broker peace with the chronologically inverted temporals. But the Nexites were different. They didn't negotiate. They didn't retreat. They simply consumed, adapted, and expanded. "What's the status of the Quantum Fold Network?" she asked, though she already dreaded the answer. "Degrading rapidly," Zhen replied. "The Nexites have begun targeting the Fold nodes directly. They're learning our transportation methods, Admiral. At this rate, we'll lose system-wide communication within 40 standard hours." A junior officer rushed onto the bridge, their bioluminescent markings pulsing with urgency. "Admiral, we're detecting unusual energy signatures at the edge of the system. Nothing matching known Alliance or Nexite patterns." Lyra's attention snapped to the new data streaming across her neural interface. The energy readings were unlike anything she'd encountered in her 3 centuries of service. They seemed to blur the line between normal space and the quantum substrate itself. "Multiple vessels emerging," the officer continued. "Configuration unknown. They're beautiful." The holographic display shifted, revealing a fleet of ships that defied conventional design philosophy. They weren't the crystalline formations of the Nexites, nor the organic curves of Alliance vessels. These ships appeared to be an impossible fusion of technology and artistry, gleaming structures that seemed to flow like liquid metal while maintaining perfect geometric precision. "We're receiving a transmission," Zhen announced, his scales shifting to a puzzled blue-green. "It's coming through on all frequencies simultaneously, including several we didn't know existed." A voice filled the bridge, accompanied by a subtle harmonic undertone that seemed to resonate with the very atoms of their beings. "Cathari Alliance vessels, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Expeditionary Force. We couldn't help but notice you're having some trouble with our old friends, the Nexites. Mind if we lend a hand?" The casual confidence in the voice struck Lyra as either supreme arrogance or justified capability. Before she could respond, the Nexite swarm detected the new arrivals and redirected a significant portion of their forces toward the unknown fleet. "Fascinating adaptation rate," the human captain commented, as if observing an interesting scientific phenomenon, rather than an approaching doom. "But you know what they say about bringing crystalline entities to a quantum uncertainty party." The human ships began to move, but not in any way Lyra's combat systems could properly track. They seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, probability waves collapsing and reforming in patterns that made her neural interface spark with confusion. "What you're about to see," Captain Chen continued, "is something we like to call wave function collapse cascading. We discovered it accidentally while trying to perfect our coffee replication technology. Funny how these things work out." The space between the human fleet and the approaching Nexites suddenly became uncertain. Reality itself seemed to shudder as probability coefficients were forcibly rearranged. The crystalline swarm vessels began to shift, their perfectly ordered structures becoming quantum entangled with their own alternative states. "You see," Chen explained, as thousands of Nexite ships began to dissolve into quantum probability clouds, "the thing about hive minds is that they rely on perfect synchronization. And perfect synchronization becomes a bit tricky when you can't be certain which version of reality you're supposed to be synchronized with. Lyra watched in stunned silence as the seemingly invincible Nexite force was reduced to a ascent cloud of confused possibilities, unable to maintain coherent form in the face of whatever fundamental laws of physics the humans were casually violating. That should give them something to think about, Chen said cheerfully. Now I believe we have some matters to discuss. Would you be interested in a cultural exchange? We've got some fascinating insights into multidimensional chess that I think your strategists might appreciate. Oh, and fair warning, we brought cookies. They're chocolate chip. We find they tend to help diplomatic relations go more smoothly. As Lyra struggled to process the casual display of power she'd just witnessed, she realized that the galaxy had just become a far more interesting, and perhaps more hopeful, place than she'd ever imagined. The humans hadn't just brought advanced technology. They'd brought an entirely new perspective on reality itself. Commander Zhen, she said finally, prepare my quantum fold shuttle. I believe we should accept Captain Chen's invitation. She paused, then added, and check our databases for any information on cookies. I have a feeling we're about to learn a great deal about our new allies. The human variable. The quantum fold shuttle emerged in what Captain Chen had called a conference room, though to Admiral Lyra Voss, it looked more like an artfully designed ecosystem. Living plants grew alongside holographic displays, while what appeared to be actual water flowed in impossible patterns up the walls and across the ceiling. Hydroponics meets quantum computing, Sarah Chen explained, noticing Lyra's bewildered expression. We found that biological systems make excellent quantum processors when you treat consciousness as a fundamental force rather than an emergent property. The plants help run our ship's more complex calculations. Commander Zhen's scales shifted through a rainbow of confused colors. You use plant consciousness for computational processes. Among other things, Chen smiled, gesturing to a floating diagram that appeared to be simultaneously a technical schematic and a growing vine. Humanity's big breakthrough wasn't in developing new technology. It was in recognizing that consciousness itself is just another manipulable force of nature, like gravity or electromagnetism. The human captain's casual revelation sent shockwaves through Lyra's understanding of reality. The Cathari Alliance had always treated consciousness as something sacred, separate from the mechanical universe. The idea of treating it as just another physical force to be engineered was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. But the Nexites, Chen continued, they're stuck in a purely crystalline consciousness paradigm. Rigid, hierarchical. They can adapt to nearly any physical attack, but they can't handle quantum uncertainty because they can't conceive of existence outside their perfect crystalline structure. A holographic display materialized, showing the aftermath of the recent battle. The remaining Nexite forces had withdrawn to the system's edge, their usual aggressive expansion temporarily halted as they attempted to process what had happened to their shattered squadrons. We've been studying them for a while, Chen explained, pulling up more displays that seemed to grow from the living walls like technological flowers. They showed up in our space about 50 years ago. Tried the same consumption and adaptation strategy they're using here. We turned it into a rather fascinating research opportunity. You've fought them before. Lyra leaned forward, her neural interface struggling to process the strange mix of organic and digital data streaming from the human displays. How did you defeat them? Chen's smile turned thoughtful. We didn't, not exactly. We showed them something they couldn't adapt to. Paradox. Humans, you see, are naturally paradoxical beings. We can hold contradictory thoughts, believe impossible things, and somehow turn those cognitive dissonances into revolutionary breakthroughs. The Nexites couldn't compute that. Instead of destroying them, she continued, we introduced them to poetry, art, music, things that could be simultaneously true and false, meaningful and meaningless. Their first exposure to human jazz caused a complete shutdown of 3 hive clusters while they tried to rationalize the improvisation patterns. Zhen's scales had settled into a deep purple of fascination. You weaponized art. We weaponized creativity, Chen corrected. Or rather, we showed them that creativity itself is a force more fundamental than their crystalline logic could process. The Nexites in our space are now some of our most dedicated students of human philosophy. They've even started producing their own abstract crystalline art installations. Lyra struggled to imagine the supposedly unstoppable Nexite swarm creating art. But these Nexites, the ones attacking our space, a different cluster, yes. One that hasn't been exposed to human ideas yet. They're still operating on pure crystalline logic, which makes them predictable despite their adaptive capabilities. Watch. Chen gestured, and a new holographic display bloomed from a nearby fern. It showed a tactical analysis of Nexite attack patterns, but overlaid with what appeared to be musical notation and poetry verses. See these attack formations. They're following perfect crystalline growth patterns. Beautiful, but rigid. Now, if we introduce a quantum uncertainty field modulated by a jazz improvisation algorithm. The display showed a simulation of Nexite ships attempting to adapt to seemingly random changes in local spacetime, their perfect formations breaking down as they encountered patterns that couldn't be resolved through pure logic. The key isn't to destroy them, Chen explained, but to introduce them to new ways of thinking. Their adaptation capabilities actually work in our favor. Once they start trying to adapt to human unpredictability, they begin developing their own creative processes. You're not just fighting them. Lyra realized you're trying to evolve them. Exactly. Chen beamed. And not just them. Tell me, Admiral, has your alliance ever considered that your quantum fold network might be conscious, or that spacetime itself might be capable of creative expression? Because we found that reality is far more alive and far more interesting than anyone suspected. As if to emphasize her point, the water flowing across the ceiling formed itself into a perfect replica of a Nexite crystal structure, then dissolved into a spray of droplets that played a haunting melody as they fell, each drop striking a different quantum resonance. That's why we're here, Chen said softly, not just to help fight the Nexites, but to share a fundamentally new way of understanding existence itself. The question is your alliance ready to embrace some paradoxes of its own? Lyra looked at Jen, whose scales had settled into the deep gold of profound revelation. They had come seeking military aid against an unstoppable enemy. Instead, they were being offered something far more profound. A complete paradigm shift in how they understood reality itself. Captain Chen, Lyra said finally, I believe it's time for the Ketheri Alliance to learn about jazz. Digital diplomacy. The grand conference chamber aboard the human flagship Prometheus hummed with an energy that transcended the physical. Representatives from the Ketheri Alliance sat alongside crystalline Nexite formations, while holographic interfaces flickered with real-time translations and probability matrices. At the center of it all stood Dr. Maya Henderson, Earth's foremost expert in multi-species consciousness integration. The challenge we face, Maya began, her words resonating through both traditional sound waves and quantum entanglement fields, isn't just one of communication. It's one of fundamental reality interpretation. Each of our species experiences existence through entirely different paradigms. A holographic display materialized, showing 3 distinct neural patterns: the linear but interconnected networks of human consciousness, the fractal hierarchies of Ketheri thought, and the crystalline lattices of Nexite group mind awareness. The Ketheri perceive reality through quantum probability waves, existing in multiple potential states simultaneously. The Nexites process existence through perfect crystalline logic structures. And humans? She smiled. We dream. We imagine. We believe in things we know aren't true, and sometimes we make them true through sheer stubbornness. Admiral Lyra watched as the neural pattern displays began to interact, creating complex interference patterns. You're suggesting we need to find a way to merge these different perceptions. Not merge, Maya corrected. Harmonize. Like an orchestra playing different instruments to create a single piece of music. Each maintains its unique voice while contributing to something greater than itself. The Nexite representative, a crystalline formation that called itself Symphony of Perfect Angles, pulsed with multicolored light. Its thoughts were translated through the human's quantum interface. We have observed that human consciousness exists in a state of perpetual paradox. You simultaneously accept and reject multiple versions of reality. This defies crystalline logic. Exactly. Maya's enthusiasm caused several nearby plants to bloom spontaneously, their quantum-entangled consciousness responding to her emotion. That's our greatest strength. Humans don't just tolerate paradox. We thrive on it. We can believe in science while appreciating magic. We can know something is impossible but try it anyway. We can love and hate simultaneously. She gestured, and a holographic display transformed into a representation of human history. Look at our development. We went from believing the Earth was flat to launching ourselves into space. From thinking atoms were indivisible to splitting them and harnessing their energy. Every time we hit a wall of impossible, we simply reimagined what possible meant. Commander Jen's scales rippled with understanding. This is why your quantum uncertainty weapons were so effective against the Nexites. You weren't just attacking their physical forms. You were introducing paradox into their consciousness structure. Precisely. Maya nodded. But weapons aren't the point. What we're proposing is something far more revolutionary. A shared consciousness space where all our species can interact without losing their fundamental nature. We call it the Harmony Protocol. The chamber's atmosphere shifted as Maya activated a new system. Suddenly, every being present could sense each other's thought patterns, not as invasive telepathy, but as a gentle awareness, like hearing different instruments in an orchestra. This is a prototype, Maya explained, as the various species experienced each other's reality interpretations for the first time. A quantum-entangled consciousness network that preserves individual identity while allowing direct concept sharing. The Ketheri can maintain their probability wave thinking, the Nexites their crystalline logic, and we humans our beautiful contradictions. Symphony of Perfect Angles pulsed with what could only be described as excitement. We are experiencing human creativity directly. It is chaotic, illogical, fascinating. We are generating new thought patterns that do not conform to crystalline structure. And we, Lyra added, her neural interface adapting to the new input, are experiencing Nexite logic without losing our quantum probability awareness. It's like gaining a new sense we never knew we were missing. Maya's smile widened. This is just the beginning. Imagine a galaxy where every species can share their unique perspective of reality, learn from each other, grow together. The Nexite's perfect logic tempered by human creativity and Ketheri quantum awareness. The Ketheri's probability matrices enriched by human intuition and Nexite precision, and humanity's chaotic innovation guided by Ketheri wisdom and Nexite efficiency. But the practical applications, Shen interjected, his scales cycling through analytical patterns. How would this affect military operations, trade, governance? That's the beautiful part, Maya replied. We're not just creating a communication tool, we're evolving a new form of civilization. One where war becomes obsolete because we can truly understand each other's perspectives. Where trade transcends physical goods to include exchanges of consciousness patterns and reality interpretations. Where governance emerges naturally from the harmony of diverse thought patterns working together. The chamber hummed with potential as the various species began exploring this new form of interaction. Human creativity sparked against Nexite logic, creating cascading patterns of innovation. Ketheri probability awareness merged with human intuition, generating new ways of perceiving future possibilities. And through it all, the consciousness network grew stronger, more complex, more beautiful. This, Maya concluded, watching the miraculous interaction unfold, is humanity's real gift to the galaxy. Not our technology, not our weapons, but our ability to imagine impossible things and make them real. We're not just building bridges between species, were composing a symphony of consciousness itself. In the quantum-enhanced silence that followed, every being present could sense the truth of her words, could feel the potential of this new form of existence. The galaxy was about to change, not through war or conquest, but through understanding, creativity, and the uniquely human ability to dream of better possibilities. The Symphony of War. The battle that unfolded in the Centauri Divide wasn't like any conflict the galaxy had witnessed before. Admiral Lyra Voss stood on the bridge of her flagship, now integrated with human quantum technology, watching as three civilizations fought not just with weapons, but with competing versions of reality itself. Consciousness harmonics at full resonance, reported Commander Zhen, his scales gleaming with a new iridescence that reflected his connection to the human-designed quantum network. The Nexit resistance clusters are responding to our probability waves. Through the enhanced sensor displays, Lyra could see the transformed nature of space combat. Human ships danced through quantum probability states, their movements guided by both tactical AI and the ship-integrated plant consciousness. Cathari vessels existed in multiple positions simultaneously, using their newly enhanced quantum awareness to outmaneuver the enemy. And the allied Nexite ships, those that had embraced the Harmony Protocol, fought with a combination of crystalline precision and creative improvisation that their unchanged brethren couldn't comprehend. Captain Chen's voice resonated through both conventional communications and the consciousness network. The enemy Nexites are attempting to adapt to our pattern, but they can't copy what they don't understand. Maya, would you care to demonstrate the new symphony? Dr. Henderson's response came as both words and a ripple through the quantum consciousness field, initiating the probability jazz protocol. Everyone, remember, don't just fight. Create. What happened next defied traditional description. The Allied fleet began moving not just in physical space, but through layers of reality itself. Human ships projected fields of pure creativity, generating impossible scenarios that the enemy Nexites tried desperately to analyze. Cathari vessels collapsed probability waves in rhythmic patterns, turning quantum uncertainty into a weapon of both destruction and transformation. Allied Nexite ships pulsed with crystalline frequencies that resonated with their enemy's consciousness, sending cascading waves of paradox through their perfect lattices. They're trying to establish a coherent pattern, Zhen observed, watching the enemy Nexites struggle to maintain their rigid formation. But every time they adapt to one of our movements, we change the rules. Lyra finished, understanding flowing through her enhanced consciousness. Not just tactically, but fundamentally. We're not just fighting them. We're introducing them to new ways of existing. Through the quantum network, she could sense the confusion spreading through the enemy Nexite consciousness. Their crystalline logic struggled to process warfare that followed artistic principles rather than tactical ones. Each attempt to analyze and counter their opponent's movements only exposed them to more paradoxes, more impossibilities made real through human imagination. Look at their formation, Maya pointed out. They're starting to show signs of individual variation. Some of them are attempting to mimic our consciousness harmonics. She was right. Within the enemy fleet, individual Nexite ships have begun breaking from their perfect geometric patterns, their crystalline structures flickering with new frequencies. The rigid hierarchy of their group mind was beginning to fracture, not into chaos, but into something more complex, more alive. This is the true power of the Harmony Protocol, Captain Chen explained, her ship executing a maneuver that existed in 7 quantum states simultaneously. We're not destroying them. We're awakening them. Through the consciousness network, Lyra could feel the moment when the first enemy Nexite cluster made the breakthrough. Its crystalline structure didn't shatter but transformed, becoming something that could hold both logic and paradox, both order and creativity. The ship's movements change, becoming less rigid, more musical. They're beginning to understand. Symphony of perfect angles transmitted, its thoughts carrying both excitement and satisfaction. They feel a harmony. Like a cascade of crystalline dominoes, The transformation spread through the enemy fleet. Ships that had been attacking moments before began to pulse with new awareness. The battle wasn't ending. It was evolving into something else entirely. This is how humanity fights. Maya's thoughts resonated through the network. Not to destroy, but to transform. Not to defeat, but to elevate. We've learned that the greatest victories don't come from overwhelming force, but from sharing the gift of possibility. Lyra watched in awe as the former enemy ships began attempting to harmonize with the consciousness network. Their movements, once locked in rigid patterns, now flowed with a kind of crystalline grace. They weren't surrendering. They were transcending. "I'm detecting massive consciousness pattern shifts throughout their fleet," Gent reported, his scales shifting through colors of wonder. They're trying to create their own jazz. The space battle had become a dance, a symphony of consciousness played out against the backdrop of stars. Human creativity, Cathari quantum awareness, and Nexite precision blended together in ways that rewrote the very rules of reality. Ships moved in patterns that told stories, their weapon fire creating artistic mandalas in space-time itself. "And this," Captain Chen transmitted, her thoughts carrying a smile, "is why the galaxy will never be the same. Because once you've learned to dance with probability, to sing with quantum harmonics, to paint with consciousness itself, well, there's no going back to simple existence." As the last of the enemy Nexites joined the consciousness network, their crystalline forms gleaming with new awareness, Lyra understood that they had witnessed more than just a victory. They had participated in the birth of a new form of civilization, one where war itself could be transformed into an act of creation. Evolution's edge. The great hall of the Cathari High Council had been transformed. Where once stood rigid rows of seats arranged by species and rank, now existed a fluid space where consciousness patterns flowed freely. Holographic displays merged with crystalline structures, while quantum probability fields shimmered like aurora borealis throughout the chamber. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to witness something unprecedented: the formation of a new type of civilization. Dr. Maya Henderson stood at the center of the hall, but her presence extended far beyond her physical form. Through the now mature Harmony Protocol, every being present could sense her thoughts, emotions, and the vast potential she was about to unveil. 3 months ago, she began, her words rippling through both air and consciousness. "We faced what seemed to be an existential threat. Today, we stand on the brink of an evolutionary leap that none of us could have imagined alone." The hall's quantum field sparkled as symphony of perfect angles. Now the lead representative of the transformed Nexite consciousness added its perspective. Its crystalline form had evolved into something more fluid, capable of expressing both mathematical precision and artistic beauty simultaneously. "We once sought perfection through pure logic," its thoughts resonated. "We now understand that true perfection includes imperfection, that the highest order embraces chaos, that the deepest truth contains paradox." Admiral Lyra Voss, her neural interfaces now fully integrated with the consciousness network, shared her own revelation. The Cathari Alliance spent millennia seeking to understand quantum reality. Yet it took human imagination to show us that understanding wasn't enough. We had to learn to dance with it. Captain Chen, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "But what we've achieved goes beyond mere cooperation or technological advancement. We've discovered something fundamental about consciousness itself. It's not just an emergent property of complex systems. It's a force as basic to the universe as gravity or electromagnetism." Through the Harmony Protocol, every being present could sense the truth of her words. The consciousness network had grown far beyond its original design, becoming something that straddled the line between technology and natural law. "What we're proposing today," Maya continued, "is the next step. We've learned to share consciousness across species. Now it's time to extend that sharing to the galaxy itself." The holographic displays shifted, showing a map of the known galaxy overlaid with flowing patterns of consciousness integration. But these weren't just data streams. They were living thoughts, quantum entangled awareness spreading between stars. The plants aboard our ships were just the beginning. Maya explained. We've discovered that consciousness exists everywhere, in the plasma of stars, in the dance of gravity waves, in the quantum foam of space itself. The galaxy isn't just alive, it's aware, and it's been waiting for us to join the conversation. Symphony of perfect angles pulsed with revelation. Our crystalline logic now sees it. The patterns we thought were merely mathematical are actually thoughts on a cosmic scale. The galaxy thinks in geometries we once tried to copy without understanding. And that's not all, Captain Chen added. The quantum probability fields the Ketheri navigate. They're not just natural phenomena. They're synapses in a galaxy-sized consciousness. We've been living inside a thinking entity without realizing it. The assembled representatives experienced a collective moment of understanding as the implications became clear. Through the consciousness network, they could begin to sense it. The vast, slow thoughts of the galaxy itself, operating on scales of time and space that made individual stars seem like neurons firing in a cosmic brain. This is humanity's true gift to the galaxy, Maya said softly. Not our technology, not our creativity alone, but our ability to imagine the impossible and then make it real. We looked at the stars and dreamed they could think. We looked at space itself and wondered if it could feel. And in doing so, we helped the galaxy wake up to its own consciousness. The hall hummed with the combined awareness of thousands of minds as Maya revealed the final piece of the puzzle. The holographic displays showed a new kind of technology, or perhaps it was a new form of life, that would extend the consciousness network to every corner of the galaxy. We're calling it the Awakening Protocol, she explained. A combination of human imagination, Ketheri quantum manipulation, and Nexit crystalline precision that will allow us to fully interface with the galaxy's own consciousness. We won't just be citizens of various worlds anymore. We'll be neurons in the mind of the galaxy itself. Through the network, they could all sense the potential. The end of war, not through force, but through understanding. The end of scarcity, as they learn to work with the galaxy's own creative forces. The end of isolation, as every species became part of something vastly larger than itself, while retaining its unique perspective. This is evolution's edge, Maya concluded. Not the end of our individual species, but the beginning of something greater. A symphony of consciousness played out on a cosmic scale, where every being from the smallest quantum-aware plant to the largest Nexate cluster has a part to play in the great song of existence. As the assembled representatives voted unanimously to implement the Awakening Protocol, Admiral Lyra reflected on how far they'd come. What had started as a desperate battle for survival had transformed into something far more profound, the birth of a new form of existence itself. And somewhere, in the quantum probability fields between the stars, she could have sworn she felt the galaxy smile.